Whoa! What is up, everybody? It's been a while. It's been a long time. Ludacarson here. That's what they call me on the streets. Joining you again. It's been so long since I've done one of these streams, and honestly, it's because this is a long story, and it's probably one you don't give a shit about. I mean, first of all, this is a surprise stream. You didn't know this was coming. All right, so that's the first thing. Surprise. It's a work day. A lot of you are probably working. I'm taking a late lunch to do this stream. So if anybody from the office is watching this, just know I'm doing a lunch. It's a late lunch because I worked during lunch because I work a lot. I'm a really good employee, in case you're wondering. You probably knew that about me. So this is a late lunch. And I'm going live because I wanted to test out. I got a whole bunch of new shit. Okay, so the story is that the computer I was using to run these streams, the story you don't give a shit about. The computer I was using to run these streams was a giant pile of garbage. It was an old computer. It's like 5 years old and was not equipped to do anything. So I was always pushing it to its... I mean, Microsoft Teams was stressing this thing to the point of its death. So I needed to get a new system. So I spent a lot of money and I bought a gaming PC with a great graphics card. So I spent a lot of money. I got a better system. So the point of this stream is really just to test out all of my shit and make sure that it works and that it's good enough to do this with you. So that's the point. We're going to talk about some things too. So that's not the only thing we're going to do, but that's sort of the point. And I want to say to you that I've missed you. I've missed YouTube. I've missed doing this. And we got to talk about wrestling. I mean, a lot has happened since I've stopped streaming in the wrestling world. A lot of predictions that I had made about AEW have come true. I don't want to call myself Nostradamus or anything like that, but I certainly predicted AEW's downfall. And though they haven't, now look, that is dramatic. And the AEW fans are already going to be mad at me. They're going to say, what are you talking about? Downfall. AEW hasn't, there was no downfall. Well, hold your horses there. Okay. What did Ariel Helwani call you booger eaters? Hold your horses. No downfall, but they're certainly not the AEW that they were at the beginning of the year. Okay. Things have happened that have changed that company, and things have happened within WWE that have changed that company to the point to where they've almost swapped positions. Like if you were excited about AEW at the beginning of this year, you're pretty damn excited about WWE now, and AEW is maybe not quite as exciting. So we're gonna hit on that at the end of the show. But I want to start today briefly by saying tomorrow night we are probably going to be doing a UFC live stream. UFC 280, I think it's 280 something. Who the hell knows? Is on tomorrow night. I think we're gonna watch it. We might do a live watch along stream with that. So if you're interested in that kind of shit, you should join me tomorrow night and let's watch it together, and you can comment in the comment section and do all the things. But let's start today, even though I sort of started 3 minutes ago just BSing. Talking about Halloween Ends. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a huge horror movie fan. Huge horror movie aficionado. I love them. Can't get enough of them. I'm sure there's some psychological reason as to why. I think it's just because I used to be so terrified of them as a kid that as an adult, I find joy in them for some reason. There's probably something behind that. I don't know what it is, but there's probably something behind that. So Halloween, and obviously if you're a horror fan, I mean, I maybe this is ridiculous to say because not all diehard horror fans are diehard Halloween fans, but there's a lot of correlation there. Right? Halloween for a lot of people is a gateway drug into horror movies. For me, it was A Nightmare on Elm Street. That was my gateway drug into horror movies. But for a lot of people, Halloween kind of fits that role in their life. And they got into horror because they love Halloween. If you were born in the 80s, Scream, like the late 80s, Scream is probably that movie for you. I love Scream, but Nightmare on Elm Street was that movie for me. So that's all well and good, right? And you tend to be very protective over the franchises that kind of bring you into a world. It's like Star Wars to me was my youth. I associate much of my childhood with Star Wars, which is why I'm so pissed off at Disney for shitting all over it. I probably wouldn't care as much if I was just a casual Star Wars fan. But as a passionate Star Wars fan who identifies with Star Wars, at least in terms of that when I was a kid, was something I was really into, you know, I get pretty pissed off when Disney just takes a shit all over it. Takes a shit all over Luke Skywalker, makes him into Jake Beta Skywalker. I have a problem with that. Okay? When you turn Han Solo into a bad father, I got a problem with that. And then you yeet him off of a fucking bridge. I got a bit of a problem with that. But Halloween is a lot of people's, like, that's Halloween is for them. So this most recent trilogy, which, you know, look, this most recent trilogy wasn't great. It isn't great. David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy is not spectacular. It's not phenomenal. And I think we got to start there. I liked Halloween 2018. I actually enjoyed Halloween 2018. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was offensive or bad in any way. I actually thought it was entertaining. I think the more that I go back, I think I heard Cody Leach say this, but I kind of align with this. The more I go back and watch that movie, the more respect I have for it, the more I actually kind of enjoy it. It's a movie that I can go back to and watch. I think it's an enjoyable ride. I think Michael Myers in that movie, who is played by James Jude Courtney, is potentially the best Michael Myers. And maybe that's controversial. I don't know. But in my opinion, I think James Jude Courtney does a great job as the Shape. And you know, in all honesty, it's kind of just an interesting, like, we're coming back. We're ignoring a lot of the sequels. We're coming back. I always kind of hate that shit too. Like, why do we got to skip all these sequels to enjoy your movie? Why couldn't you have baked those sequels in? And I get it. Halloween got kind of weird. But I thought Halloween 2018 was okay. Halloween Kills is awful. It's an awful movie. It's the worst of the trilogy. I'm going to say, there's my first hot take of the show. Halloween Kills is significantly worse than Halloween Ends. And all of these people who are criticizing Halloween Ends for not sticking the landing, they need to go back and watch Halloween Kills, because Halloween Kills is a much worse movie. Halloween Kills is one that I never want to go back and revisit. I have gone back and revisited it, and I never have a good time when I do. I think I lose respect for it more every time I go back and watch it. The social commentary that's just jammed into that movie that's so obvious. There's a lot of shit in there about mob mentality and things like that. They're just so unnecessary. I remember the villagers, the people of the town of Haddonfield, are chasing this like killer guy that they think is Michael, but the guy doesn't look anything like Michael Myers. He's like 7 feet too short and overweight. He doesn't look anything like Michael, so I don't understand any of that. There's the idiocy of Allison, who basically gets people killed. It's a bad movie. Laurie Strode spends the entire time almost like in a hospital bed flirting with Frank, and they have this like flowery purple prose dialogue with each other where they're talking about evil, and there's all these monologues and BS. Halloween Kills sucked. Laurie's daughter, whose name I can't even remember it. She just acts like an idiot in that movie too. It just sucks. And then you get Halloween Ends. And so this movie, it's fair to say, pretty divisive, right? I've seen YouTube videos where people are saying this is the worst movie ever. Can't believe you would do this to Michael. Can't believe you would do this to the franchise. How could you mess this up? Yada, 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 right? Just all kinds of opinions. And then I've seen videos praising this movie, acting as if it does nothing wrong, as if this is the quintessential Michael Myers Halloween film. This is the golden egg that Halloween should strive for. And what an artistic vision by David Gordon Green. And where do I fall? Well, I fall firmly in the middle of those two opinions. That's where I kind of align. I think that this is a good movie. I think the first half of this movie is a really good movie. And then I think it gets a little dumber. And then by the end, I think we're fully onto the dumb train. We're diving right in. The end is what really ruins this movie. As a matter of fact, the marketing for the movie, the fact that this is the third act in a trilogy, and the fact that they act like this is the bow to wrap everything up. Those are the things that really ruin this movie. Because as a standalone film, if you take Michael Myers out of this movie, I actually think this is a solid movie. They do a lot of things right. It's the fact that Michael Myers is even in this movie at all, in the state that he's in, and the shape that he's in this movie, that I think ruins this movie. So I want to go and I want to look, and I'm going to do this here, and we're going to take a look at where Rotten Tomatoes sits on this film. Because I think that's kind of interesting and telling. If you look here, the tomato meter for this film is a 40%, and the audience score is a 57%. And that's a little worse than I would have expected, honestly, because of the 50-50 nature that I've seen in terms of reactions of this film. Sitting at 40% for critics and 57% for audience is a bit interesting to me. The critics' consensus here, what to know from Rotten Tomatoes, says that it for now it's a frequently befuddling installment that's stabbed, slashed, and beaten by a series of frustrating missed opportunities. So I guess the interesting question here is, do you agree with that? Do you agree with that sentiment? Let's go read some of the critics. They say this is Halloween Ends. I say, can we get that in writing? Yeah, this guy, Richard Roper. Yeah, okay. Look at all the top critics. Don't like it. Dylan Roth, an engaging and suspenseful psychological thriller that could have functioned totally independent. I agree with that. I agree with that. I disagree with this. It works in concert with what's most interesting about Greensprint. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And as a matter of fact, that's the problem of the film. That's what people are bitching about. The truth is, that's the weakness here. It doesn't work in concert with the two previous films. As a matter of fact, if you take the two previous films and you try to watch this one right after them, this feels like a completely different movie. This is completely different. The character motivations are different. The setting is semi-different, feels different at least. The tone is different. Everything is different about this film than the previous two entries, which is why I think this movie is being judged so harshly, because it is the third of those movies. But there's a lot that works here. I mean, take these critics. Actually, let's check out. I don't care about the critics. There are no featured audience reviews at this time. Look at this. This franchise of 13 sequels is finally running out of steam. Are you kidding me? Have you seen Halloween Resurrection? Definitely not what we're hoping for. It's not a bad movie, but it's a bad Halloween movie. That's an interesting take. I can certainly understand that take. Halloween 3 isn't a bad Halloween movie. Halloween 3 is actually one of the best Halloween movies, if not the best. Perhaps that's a hot take. Don't really care. The only reason I'm giving the 4.5 stars is because Corey died. Well, spoiler alert, by the way. I guess, well, shit. If I was planning on not going into spoilers, I guess that got ruined by this review. And by the way, what a jackass. Who is hey, Justin D, why don't you not spoil the damn movie in your little reviews? You know, people might want to come and read these reviews before you write this garbage, and you're going to just right out of the gate, first sentence in, you're going to spoil it. You're going to spoil it. And if you liked his character way more than you thought you were going to, why are you happy he died? I do, however, get this. I do agree with this. This movie gets so much unnecessary hate. Who missed the obvious point this Halloween is trying to make? Obvious. I don't think it's very obvious. Essentially, it is about evil that truly doesn't die and that anyone can be in the essence of evil. Evil died twice this movie. Okay, yeah, sure. Sure. But I don't know that I would jump to say that they made it that very clear in the movie. The movie is about transformation. He's not wrong. That's what the movie's about. And you can see that right from the beginning of the film with the pumpkins that are like going in and out of each other. The sense is that evil can take multiple forms. The face of evil changes, right? but evil can always exist. It also kind of plays on the idea that this town is cursed by Michael Myers and the people are cursed and yada, yada, yada. There are some things that worked about Halloween Ends, and there are some things that don't work. And like I said at the beginning of this video, really the biggest thing that doesn't work is the fact that this is the third act in that trilogy. So I guess I sort of agree that this isn't, it shouldn't have been a Halloween movie. Okay, fine. Again, I can understand that take. But I don't know if the problem is that this is a Halloween movie or if that this is like, you know, just a different take, just a different... And because it's the third act in this series, people were expecting something different. So I'm actually kind of glad we got something different because, in all honesty, there's only so much I can take of just Michael doing the same shit over and over again with no change, no adjustments, no, nothing new. And so I'm sort of glad that they took some risks, I'm sort of glad that they did some things differently here. Some of it was done really well. Again, the beginning of the movie, the middle of the movie, up until Michael really gets involved. And when Michael really gets involved, that's when things kind of fall apart a little bit. When they're playing on this idea of Corey, and spoilers again, who accidentally kills this kid, this little bastard kid, by the way, little son of a bitch. Corey accidentally kills this kid, and he has to live with that. He's living with that. And the town won't let him move on. They won't let him live a normal life. They won't let him kind of exist outside of this act that he committed. And the town's kind of shitty to him. And these kids, these band kids, which by the way, why would you pick band kids to be your bullies? Band kids at my school were bullied. So if new high school band kids are the cool kids, well, things have certainly changed. Things have certainly changed. But they pick on him and shit. And so that's where the story really works. You have this idea of Corey who's trying to move on from this act that he accidentally committed earlier in his life. And then you have Allison who's trying to move on from the events that happened to her in her life. So you have these two parallels. Laurie too. But Laurie is kind of handled outside of this a little bit, even though she's kind of the catalyst for all of this sort of... That's kind of a weird... She's the catalyst for Allison being involved. But you have these two heads of the coin, where you have Allison, who's the victim, who's kind of looked at as a hero, and you have Corey, who's the villain, who's looked at as evil and damaged. So you have these two damaged people who find each other, and they can see sort of the holes in each other. And that, to me, is the best part of this movie. That relationship is actually handled very well, in my opinion. And if you know people like this, if you know people who have gone through traumatic events, this is not an unrealistic portrayal of how this relationship might play out, might look. It's also not an unrealistic idea that these two might find each other and be enamored with each other and attracted to each other, because they might see in each other kind of their holes and they want to fix each other. It's like kind of an interesting thing, right? So I loved all that. I actually thought that was done very well. Laurie in this movie is a little insufferable. I know some people like her more in this movie because she's not waxing poetic about evil, but I actually found her to be slightly insufferable in this movie because she's almost like too funny and goofy and stupid. She like has a line in the movie where she talks about showing fear her tits or something like that. It's just fucking dumb, to be honest with you, which is fine. Whatever. When the movie really goes off the rails is when Corey kind of gets pushed off the bridge by these shitty band kids. And then he gets pulled into this tunnel by Michael, and Michael kind of like chokes him. And then like there's some sort of like implied transfer of evil from Michael into Corey. So it's kind of like, it's just this weird moment that they don't really explain to you, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I'm all for, directors, and I'm all for movies not over explaining things, but there are certain situations where you should explain something so people can understand what the fuck is going on. And in this scene, when Michael kind of grabs Corey to choke him, it's really hard to understand what's happening here. But it seems like the idea is that there's some sort of transfer of evil from Michael to Corey. It's just really hard to really hard to understand that. They don't make it very clear. So that happens. And then we get where the movie kind of falls off. Because after that, Corey becomes kind of evil. He starts to be corrupted by this evil, and then he starts killing a bunch of people. And that's when the movie gets like weird to me. There's like one scene in particular that Halloween fans are really pissed about. And it's where Corey just beats the shit out of Michael Myers and takes his mask. And a lot of Halloween fans are pissed because it's like, why would you bitch out Michael like that? Like, why would you make Michael some bitch that just gets his ass kicked by Corey? And I think the idea of the movie, I think what they were going for is that Michael is weak. They sort of tease that he like gets stronger as he kills people. But that's also sort of weird because it's like, dude, he slaughtered a fucking village worth of people at the end of Halloween Kills. How was he not like, why did he go hide then? Wouldn't he be out actively just slaughtering people to try to get as strong as he possibly could? It just didn't make a lot of sense. Now, they do kind of highlight in the movie that all these people are missing. So it does kind of make you think like Michael's, killing these people, and that's why they're missing. So the movie kind of falls off there. There's a lot of like weird. Corey at the end of the movie like kills himself. And he does it because he wants to ruin Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie's relationship with Allison. And he knows that by committing suicide, by doing this, she'll blame Laurie for his death. It's kind of interesting because I kind of love that and I hate it at the same time. It's like absolutely the most awful, evil, dickish thing you could do in that situation. So I kind of like that it's just like ultimate evil. Motherfucker is going to kill himself to ruin other people's lives, which is evil. So I can like it from that perspective, but I don't think it really fits with like Corey's character up till this point. He wants to kind of run away with Allison. He's like trying to burn shit down so that he can run away, and all of a sudden he just decides to off himself. It's just kind of weird. And then you get the most egregious part of the movie, and this is where the movie absolutely falls into the dog shit category. Like if you think this movie is dog shit, it's probably because of the very end. Michael all of a sudden shows up, gets his mask back, has to fight Laurie again, of course, because we got to do this yet again. They fight in what's a pretty mediocre battle between the two of them. Honestly, Halloween 2018 was a better battle. I thought Halloween H2O handled this a lot better. So we get this battle. Laurie ends up winning. Allison comes in and helps her. And then the whole town like carries Michael to a scrapyard, and then they throw him in, and his body just gets mangled and destroyed. And you get to see it. It's actually a pretty cool visual. But outside of the visual, and then they show Laurie's kind of living a happy life. She gets to be with Frank. Allison's leaving the town. She's headed off to start a new life somewhere else, and that's the end of it. The crazy thing is that I like this movie enough that I've gone back and watched it again, and I want to watch it again. So this movie keeps bringing me back. So I can't say it's a bad movie. I actually think it's a good movie. Again, the first half of this movie is really good. It's everything with Michael that makes this movie bad. I'm so curious as to what the original idea was here, because the rumors are that this changed a lot with COVID. This changed a ton during COVID, because this got delayed because of COVID, and that the story here changed a ton during that time. So I'm very curious as to what the original story was and what the original intent was. Did the studio, were they the ones who forced Michael into this movie? Maybe they were going to go a completely different direction, because the title scene is very much like the actual title card is very much like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which is the one that Michael's not even in. So it's just interesting. The fans' reactions to this movie, of course, have been nothing but ridiculous. In a sense that people are going batshit crazy about this, or they're going batshit crazy for it. And again, I don't think this movie warrants either one. It's certainly not a masterpiece. It's certainly not a giant pile of shit. The end is a giant pile of shit. But outside of that, it's a fairly decent movie. 2 or 3 stars out of 5, somewhere in there. That's where this movie belongs. It doesn't belong in the 1 star out of 5 category. It doesn't belong in the 5 stars out of 5 category. It's firmly somewhere in between the 2 to 3 stars. And that's what I would give it. I would give it 3 stars because I liked it more than I disliked it. I very much disliked the end, but I liked it more than I disliked it. Let me know what you think. If you watch this video after the fact, I'm sure a lot of you will. Let me know in the comments section what you thought, because I'm very curious. I'm very curious. Which side of the fence are you on? Or are you more like me and you're in the middle? Because I'm obviously very curious about that. I want to pivot now from Halloween to Hellraiser. For two reasons. One, because I find this incredibly interesting. So Halloween, I should have zoomed in. I really should have zoomed in because I don't know if you can read this, but that's okay. That's all right. Well, Halloween gets... Scroll back up. No, get out. No. Well, Halloween gets a 40% and a 57%. Hellraiser gets a 66% and a 60%. Now, I'm going to make, again, I'm going to make another bold statement here. Hellraiser is worse than Halloween Ends. The new Hellraiser movie is worse than Halloween Ends. Is that a bold statement? I don't know. I found it a struggle to get through Hellraiser. And I almost, I was going to do a separate segment on Hellraiser today, and I was going to talk through it, but I don't want to. I really don't. I don't think it's a terrible... This is another situation. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I just think the first half of this movie is boring. And there is not a more egregious sin to me than to be boring. Boring! I also want to say that, when you're doing a remake of a movie, you're already starting out, especially a good movie. If you're doing a remake of a good movie, or a movie that already has a following, you're starting out here because everyone already knows this movie is not going to be as good as the original. The original Hellraiser is a fantastic movie. Now, some people dislike it. That's fine. I love the original Hellraiser. I think it is great. I think the original Hellraisers dive into sadomasochism and the idea that it blends sexuality with pain. And for a lot of people, that's a thing. And it sort of plays up to that, to the ultimate extreme. Pain can be pleasure, pleasure can be pain. And it's a great exploration into that. But it also tells a pretty good story, too. Of this woman who's having an affair with this man. The man dies. The woman's obsessed with him. She wants to bring him back. There's a lot there. So it's pretty good. Pretty good movie. Pinhead is barely in it. Pinhead became sort of the icon of Hellraiser, but he's second tier horror villain, in my opinion. So I didn't really care. A lot of people were bent out of shape that they had a lady Pinhead. I didn't really give a shit. In all honesty, I thought, whatever, dude. You want a lady Pinhead? Give us a lady Pinhead. I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But a lot of people were pretty bitter about it. But what I have to say is that, when I look at the score for Hellraiser, 60%, and then I look at the score for Halloween Ends, 57%, I do not think Hellraiser was a better movie than Halloween Ends, because at least Halloween Ends, the first half of that movie was enjoyable. It was like solid. Like, they're telling a good story. The first half of Hellraiser puts you to sleep. It's boring. I was so bored watching the first half of Hellraiser. Everybody's like, oh, you got to stick through to the end. How? How can you stick through to the end when you're falling asleep during the first half of the movie? And I was. I'm sorry. I was. If people like the new Hellraiser, I think that's fine. Obviously, 60% of the audience score, pretty high. People really enjoyed it. I just found myself falling asleep. So if you think that's bad, if you dislike that, if you dislike my opinion, I don't care. You can like what you like. No one's telling you this. I'm just telling you kind of where I landed. I landed on the fact that Halloween Ends is a better movie than Hellraiser, and this is all I really want to say about Hellraiser. You know what? If you plan on going to watch Hellraiser on Hulu, don't. Go watch the original Hellraiser. It's better. And that's the problem with remakes, is that if you want me to watch the remake, you better give me a better movie than the original, because if not, I'm just going to go back and watch the original. Why would I waste my time on the remake when I could go back and watch the original and have a better time? obviously I'm going to choose the original. You know, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what most people are going to do, quite frankly. So that's all I want to say about Hellraiser. Really. It's, in my opinion, skippable. And the first red flag, honestly, for Hellraiser should have been when we found out it was going to be streaming on Hulu exclusively. That should have been the first red flag for us, is when we found that out. They weren't going to even bother releasing this in theaters. This is a Hulu exclusive, and we should have known at that point we were in for maybe a little disappointment. Again, comment in the comment section. I mean, if you love Hellraiser, that's fine. You can have a different opinion than me, but please convince me to love it. I want to love it. Convince me that Hellraiser 2022 is as good as Clive Barker's Hellraiser from the 80s. Convince me, please. I'm open to hear it. Open to have my mind changed. And again, for all the people who want to say, oh, you're sexist, that's why Whoa, I lost connection there for a second. That's not my issue with this film. Lady Pinhead is not my issue with this movie. My issue with this movie is I just don't think it's really worth it to get invested in it. It's just what I think. Okay. I want to touch on wrestling for a second because, and again, this is going to be a short little live. We're not going to go forever. A, because I'm doing this on a late lunch from work, and B, because I wanted to test out some of this equipment. So I'll have to go back and watch this and see if it's any good. But I do want to touch on wrestling just a little bit. So I heard today, you know, there was all the kerfuffle that happened backstage between CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, yada, yada, yada. It created a whole brawl out is what they call it. Created a whole situation with an AEW where AEW had to suspend everybody and figure everything out, yada, yada, yada. Because there were physical blows. This was on top of a lot of other backstage news about AEW and people being pretty unhappy in AEW and yada, yada, yada. So it's come out today. Ace Steel was just released, I think yesterday. It was either yesterday or the day before, sometime earlier this week. Ace Steel gone from AEW. And now reports are coming out today that AEW is looking to buy out the contract of CM Punk. I find this incredibly interesting. I find it so fascinating. A, because CM Punk is probably responsible for a lot of the growth that AEW has had over the last year. I think that's a fair thing to say, right? When CM Punk came to AEW, he created a lot of buzz. There was a lot of buzz created about that. And he brought with him a lot of lapsed people and a lot of other fans who wanted to see CM Punk again, who knew the historical significance of CM Punk coming back to the ring. It was a fun thing to watch. I watched it. It was incredible. The problem that AEW didn't quite think about is that CM Punk is a bit of a cancer. He always has been. He always will be. It's his personality, right? CM Punk is a bit of a dickhead. And everybody says this. Everybody who's worked with CM Punk before, a lot of the people, they kind of agree with that CM Punk is a bit of a dickhead. You know what you're getting with CM Punk. You're going to get somebody who whines and complains a little bit, yada, yada, yada. Well, CM Punk didn't, you know, I'm not going to go through the whole backstory, but there was beef between him and Hangman Page because of something Hangman Page said, and Punk got pissed about it and said, you didn't clear that with me. I think it was about Colt Cabana. But anyways, this led to a fight. And so at the time, I think I was streaming at the time on YouTube. And I think I said something along the lines of like, look, this is the biggest moment in AEW history. And it's also the downfall. You know, I think this is the peak of AEW. And I really still think that's true. And now AEW is taking all of that from the past year with CM Punk being there, and that they've got to throw it away because they got to let Punk go. And Punk very well could go to WWE. Do I think he will? No. Maybe. Yeah, I do actually think he will. I think WWE is going to want the paycheck. They're going to want the money. I think Punk's going to want the money. So I think it's going to be a completely money-motivated decision, and Punk's going to end up going to back to WWE. I think it's all very interesting because where does AEW go from here? So the Elite comes back, and AEW just kind of morphs into what it was prior to Punk being there. But the problem with that is you still have a lot of ex-WWE guys who have sort of taken over. So AEW is broken into these two camps. You have the former WWE guys and you have the non-WWE guys, the kind of OGs, AEW OGs. And if AEW doesn't figure out what kind of product it wants to be, it's going to have a lot of trouble. You're either WWE light, like TNA tried to do, or you're not. And AEW right now feels a lot like WWE light. It feels a lot like Diet WWE. AEW was further hampered when Triple H took over creative control in WWE because a lot of people who had left WWE, a lot of people who were flirting with leaving WWE, they now want to stay and they want to come back, including some people who are in AEW, I've heard. So that creates an interesting situation for AEW where now I don't think WWE was really like they lived in two separate universes and they really weren't a threat to each other. Everybody likes to say, oh, AEW is a competitor for WWE. No, they're not. They're not. They're not a competitor. They coexist in the world of wrestling. WWE is the monolith. Nothing competes with the monolith, okay? And you're just going to have to get that through your head. In your lifetime, nothing is probably going to compete with WWE. We're never going to live in that world again. It's fun to think about what it would be like in the next Attitude Era, in the next WWE versus WCW, the next Monday Night Wars. We're never going to get it, okay? We're never going to get it. I don't know. I don't know where AEW goes from here if they let Punk go, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. They got big enough talent. They don't need Punk. They never did. Bringing him in was a big deal. But I wonder how many of those fans they kept. How many of the people who had lapsed to come back to see Punk return only came back for like 1 month? They came back to watch him return. They came back to watch his first pay-per-view match. And then they went back to their lives. I bet it's a lot of people. Dynamite still does good numbers. AEW still has a solid fan base. I'm one of them. I like AEW. I just think WWE right now is firing on more cylinders. That's my opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is kind of interesting how this is all played out. And if CM Punk ends up back in WWE, well, that'll be even more interesting, right? I don't know. CM Punk's always been a cancer, man. He's a dickhead. He's got opinions. He's wrong a lot of the times. He's an elitist. He's a bit of a cuck. I've always been a CM Punk the character fan. I've never been a CM Punk the human fan, right? There you go. Anyways, that's all I wanted to touch on today. I did see that New Japan Pro Wrestling is mad at WWE because of the Carl Anderson booking. I'm thinking, who gives a shit? I saw one of the soy boys that do one of the wrestling shows. I don't even know which one it is. And they were out here saying, oh, WWE's really not leaving a good impression. And I'm thinking, do you think WWE gives a shit what New Japan Pro Wrestling thinks of them? Why the hell would they? Who cares? WWE is WWE. They don't care. Why would they care? They're the big boys. You think they're upset because New Japan Pro Wrestling's mad at them? Whatever. Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson they just follow the money, man. They're out there working. They're trying to get money. They got money from WWE. Back off. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for joining me on this late lunch stream that I'm doing here live. Like I said, we might tomorrow night. I don't know, because I got to change I'm changing my whole shit up again. I'm bringing in more monitors, doing all kinds of stuff. So we might stream live tomorrow night. We might not during UFC 280. Either way, I'm going to be watching it. So you should follow me on social media at Ludacarson Plays. Check out, I'm going to cut some of these and put them into videos. So you should check that out too. But anyways, thank you all for watching. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. Really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.